What I remember most is it being a collective. What I mean by that was that before we began each meeting, Claire would go around and we would have a discussion about how people were doing, what people were doing. And so in many respects, it was about building community. And I think that's one aspect of it that I have found to be unique. I've not seen it replicated in many places. It really took to heart the feminist notion that the personal is political.
I always felt like the meetings were like mini workshops, mini seminars that raised not just intellectual issues, but political issues and issues about values and issues about how you incorporate race and transnational perspective.
It was like the most incredible kind of intellectual conversation about ideas and texts. You just felt so intellectually alive.
I've remained in contact with feminist studies because it's one of the foundational institutions instituting of the possibility of feminist movement in bell hooks terms, that ongoing yearning movement.
While I have been lucky to see my work published in multiple journals over the years, the biggest honor for me has been to have the articles and poetry published in feminist studies. The rigor, the care, the political commitments of the multiracial editorial board over the years has set an unparalleled standard for conscious feminist writing.
No author ever received better feedback because there were so many people from the humanities, the creative people, the social sciences, all bringing their best, most constructive, helpful selves, and critical selves for sure, but in the most constructive way, to bear on each and every article. Really, not the most efficient process, but for each author, the best possible process.
People weren't there to stump the author. They weren't there to nitpick, to find flaws. They were there, how do we make this piece work on its own terms? There was such generosity.
We have been an amazing collective in terms of very close attention to people's work, always wanting to make it as good as it could possibly be, and really being supportive and constructive with that process. So we were reading during our collective meetings, we were reading overnight, reading outside our fields. And so it modeled a new way of engaging, and a feminist way of engaging from multiple perspectives with a single piece.
Honestly, I'd never been edited like that before. It was always an experience of intellectual sharing. The process was just so profoundly collaborative.
We try to get the best out of everybody when they publish with us. You know, at least 8 people have read the piece once or twice or thrice before it goes back. And then, you know, the editor and you, Ashwini, continue to work with the author until it's something that we feel that it's going to make a real contribution. So again, I don't think that other journals that put so much of energy into this, and I think we do it because we all believe in the process.
You've had a multiracial, intergenerational, multilingual board for so many years, means that who you start with at the table then shows who shows up for the party.
Feminist studies as a collective embodied that. It had diversity on its editorial board before that was the thing. There was representation that you didn't find in traditional journals. It was all women. which again was unique at that moment in time. And it was really a way of us building a community of scholars. And so a lot of emphasis was put on what kind of positive feedback, even when we said no, that we could give to someone who was contributing and submitting to the journal. And I also used feminist studies as a kind of gateway for me to support other Black women feminist scholars.
There's often a profound dissatisfaction with the way in which the global South is discussed in actually many feminist journals. We really went out of our way to find the best scholars from the global South.
We've published more people who are not at R1 universities in the United States. We've published more of people all over the world who might not have English as a first language. So I think we've become more inclusive in multiple ways. I think that word gets bandied around a lot these days, but we've actually tried to put it into practice.
We've watched it grow from a social science focused, primarily US-based journal to a transnational work of scholarship, activism, and art.
Feminist Studies started as an explicitly socialist feminist journal. We're always expanding what it is that we want to be the context for how are we considering this material? Are there new approaches? Will we get new truths?
We talked about the broader field and what was going on and how that related to what's happening in feminist inquiry.
Some of the most interesting moments in the earlier issues are the forums where people from somewhat different viewpoints come together and forge ideas in conflict.
As Angela Davis put it, conflict and collaboration. The way that feminist movement makes us just safe enough to take stupid risks, that the capacity in feminist movement to engage in some kind of risky propositions, to see where they hold and where they don't, and what kinds of alliances fail and what kinds work. I think of feminist studies as part of movement.
Yes.
And it has continued to do that in really basic ways, really fundamental ways.
So I joined the collective 2 years ago in January of 2020. And through all the turbulence that has followed, protests for racial justice, COVID-19, the election and the insurrection at the Capitol, the complexities of the Me Too movement, the fallout of global capitalism, Feminist Studies has gathered a broad range of feminist thinkers, including emerging and well-established voices, artists, activists, academics, to offer really thoughtful reflection and analysis about this complex, rapidly changing world that we're living in.
For a scholarly journal, I think we're terrific at our visual works, at our poetry, and that those things, much of the time, we can build those into an issue on a special topic so that they're integrated. A lot of the time, we're good at connecting a global perspective and a multidisciplinary perspective.
That we continue doing poetry and art. There's a very strong statement about the importance of creative work to understanding.
The original collective back in 1977 and 78 were all unemployed graduate students or assistant professors, all of us. So we all together had to go through that. And then we started to host the meetings in our home. The group became it became a true collective in the 50s, but also an incredibly supportive friendship network.
There was a kind of synchronicity between our process and our political ideas. There was a mutuality of respect. There really was the spirit of a kind of political and personal commitment to collectivity and doing intellectual work that really mattered in a larger context. It made staying in the academy fun.
Yeah.
I think it was one of the best experiences of my life. It was a time I take great pleasure in remembering. And I had the sense that we were helping shape the field of women's studies too.
Much of how I learned my feminist practice as an intellectual, I would attribute to my experience with feminist studies. You can be really critical. You can dismantle the logic of a paper, but then you put it back together. And how do you do it? With intellect and with love.
While we have to mourn the loss of so many feminist thinkers, while we mourn the loss of so many feminist bookstores, of lesbian bars, of real books, feminist studies is still standing. It is a cypress tree that has found a way to work with the wind. My mind wanders, scours, prays for what can sustain us. And I look to feminist studies with awe and with appreciation.
Anything else you'd like to say that I haven't asked you about?
No, I can't think of anything except to wish the current collective my very best wishes, and that the next 50 years of feminist studies should be as exciting as the first 50 years were.
Wonderful. Here's to that. Yay.